Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's news. So I hope that all of you had a fantastic weekend and are ready to start your work week. Or if you don't have to work, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. Let me know if you don't have to work and you watch a news thing on what people primarily use for work, because I guess I assume that people that would watch this would be working professionals, or I guess people in school, or at least I don't know. I don't know. I guess maybe I shouldn't assume. You know what they say about assuming. So I hope you're all doing really well this morning. I think my mic is a little hot. Let me update that just a little. We'll see how that looks. That looks better, at least by the bars. I can't hear, so you guys let me know. All right. I'm starting just a little early. I know I said 7:35. It's 7:33, so I'll give everybody about 2 minutes. How's everyone doing this morning or this afternoon if it's Europe and Africa? I guess night if you're in Southeast Asia. Yeah, night. Sorry, my time zone math is not always the best. All right. So let's start out with a standard introduction. All opinions on here are those of my own. I haven't been asked to say anything by anyone. Haven't been paid to say anything, and these opinions do not reflect on that of any employer, past, present, or future. Just me. All right, and as far as a really quick news update, just to keep you guys in the loop. So next week is Thanksgiving, and you will still have news next week. So you can expect to have news here next week. Also on top of that, Saturday, that's the Saturday for my challenge. So I think I'm going to still do that. I'll probably throw that schedule up later this week. So on Saturdays, the last Saturday of every single month, I'm going to be trying to do some sort of challenge. Now, last week we did a Kubernetes operator that did injected a pod into a deployment. So you can go check that out. But in this upcoming one, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be doing, but I think I might do a dual stack. So I'm not sure. I don't have networking in my house for IPv6, so I'm not sure if I'm going to do that one. I have to look into whether I wanna enable IPv6 on my home network. So there's that one, and then but other than that, I don't know. We maybe need to look into another challenge. I could just try to do something fun and stupid, like I don't know. But I'll be doing some challenge this upcoming weekend. So if you want to see and hang out for that, let me know. And tweet at me or join the Discord and let me know if you have a challenge that you'd love to see. The other thing we could do is like terminating certs in Kubernetes. I hesitate to do that one as a challenge because I've done that several times. So it's kind of just like cookie cutter, copy and paste. Maybe that's a better video than a challenge. But anyways, I'd like to do something that I will actually fail at. All right. Google has had some rough weeks. Google went down, and I'm going to talk about this at the beginning. So as you all know, I do security first, and then we do some cloud, and then we do general articles that I found useful, and then very last we do just some projects. And some projects I find useful. Usually I follow a theme. So we're going to start with security, and part of security is availability. I think that some people forget that, but availability is a big thing in security. That being said, if you've been using Google Cloud, they've had two major outages in the last 2 weeks, and then they had a third minor outage. It was rough for them. But what I wanted to ask you guys and bring up as a discussion point is Kelsey Hightower. I actually really like him. He released Kubernetes the hard way, which I based my series on Kubernetes the hardest way off of, and is actually one of the people that helped me get into Kubernetes in the first place. So I have a lot of respect for some of the work that he does. Kelsey Hightower said that Google going down was a negative, had a negative, I want to say connotation, but that's not the word, a negative effect on him personally, like his brand, I guess, since he's tied it so closely to GCP. I would say that I don't think so. GCP is so large and has so many things. No one single person was responsible for the fact that it went down or that it's gone down multiple times. What do you guys think though? What are your own personal? If your service goes down, do you feel like your brand, your person is any less credible? I don't know. Personally, I feel like these are such large and complicated projects that no one person could be to blame, just because no one person is in charge of so much of the architecture. So, anyways, yeah, that's a talking point. Well, Kelsey Hightower, I don't think it is. I personally think that services are going down. And honestly, if my service stays up half as much, well, hopefully it does half as much, but as much as GCP's, I will count my service as really good. If all my service goes down for is GCP down times when it's down, I'll count myself that I've done a good job, because GCP doesn't go down. None of the public clouds go down nearly as much as some people. Now, when they're down and your app and service runs on them, yeah, there's not much you can do. So places like, I know Snap is huge on GCP. I'm throwing Snap out there, but I know that there's other ones that were unavailable. One thing, I can maybe look that up. Discord, so your Discord server, actually, I know that I didn't get some notifications, so that was probably from that. Spotify, Etsy, Home Depot. I didn't realize Home Depot. Have I ever guys told you my Home Depot story? I was at a KubeCon, so I'm going to tell you now. I was at a KubeCon, and Home Depot had a booth at KubeCon. So I went up to their booth to talk to them about how they use Kubernetes, because I thought that's why you went to KubeCon, was to talk about how you use Kubernetes. And they're like, "Oh, we're not going to talk about that." Okay, so they had some socks, and I was like, "Can I have a pair of socks? Because I mean, I guess you don't want to talk to me." And they're like, "Well, we need to give you our sales pitch." And I was like, "Is this about your tech?" And they're like, "No, it's about working at Home Depot." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to work at Home Depot." And they wouldn't give me a pair of socks. And they wouldn't talk to me about anything that they do. They wouldn't even confirm that they used Kubernetes in their internal infrastructure. It was bizarre. It was bizarre. Anyways, let's get on to security. That's my bizarre. I don't know why they had a booth. I don't know why they paid for it. It's a bunch of developers that are there, and I realize that a lot of people hire from KubeCon, and that's fine. But did you make a booth purely to hire? And how do you think you would hire me if you didn't talk to me about your tech stack? At least a little. I did get finally that they did some distributed Kubernetes clusters in their stores as Edge, but like they were very reluctant to talk about it. Anyways, sorry. I think I have told that story before, but it's kind of one of my favorites. I don't have Home Depot socks. I don't have them. I wanted them. I would have worn them on stream. Don't have them. Anyways, let's talk about GitHub credentials exposed. Well, not GitHub credentials, but credentials exposed on GitHub. And this comes from the Firefox cookie database. I guess some people are checking in their Firefox profiles, and that contain sensitive information. So you probably shouldn't do this. Don't check in your Firefox profiles folder, because it checks in your cookies, which could contain sensitive information. Now, a lot of these expire, so like your refresh tokens and stuff well, not your refresh tokens, but anyways, a lot of these tokens do expire, but you can expose yourself quite a bit. So anyways, don't check this into your GitHub. Don't do it. And that will solve us a lot of problems. And then we talked about Google Cloud was down. It's fixed. It's all updated. I know this says partially fixed. That's a lie. It's completely fixed. The reason it was partially fixed is basically they got the load balancers updated. So basically their load balancers were down. And when they initially got them back working, you still weren't allowed to make changes. So that's why it was partially fixed and then finally eventually fixed. I think it was down for 30 minutes, 30-ish minutes. Oh, about 35 minutes. My guesstimates are awesome. So you would say that Google's downtime was unacceptable. I don't know. I feel for them. Their services are so large and so complex, and there's so many moving parts to not have any downtime and think that no downtime is unacceptable as a corporation. I know that companies, when you depend on another company, are going to push for that. And whenever I build a service, my goal is to have zero downtime. But one of the things that affects my downtime is my cloud providers. But there's so many other things that are involved in that as well. I just don't think it's actually I think your response is more appropriate and more telling about your service. Not only how fast did you fix it and how fast you could diagnose the problem. This is a big key here. It was down for about 35 minutes, which is fantastic. But what you publish afterwards with how you're going to fix it and how you're not going to have the same problem in the future, that to me says so much more than how long you haven't been down. That's a double negative. Don't use me for English, but yeah. Anyways, that is what I look for when I'm looking for a reliable service. But anyways, yeah. Along with that is DNS poisoning. If you don't know what DNS poisoning is, this is a good article on DNS poisoning. They do a good little background on what DNS poisoning originated as in 2008. And basically there is... To solve this, there was a little bit of randomness incorporated into the DNS servers, and according to this, you can actually guess that, and so it's not quite as expected, and so there's some unexpected Linux behavior. So, anyways, this is mostly all resolved, but there was this issue where there was a new channel for DNS poisoning, which in the end could get your website resolved to a different domain instead of the one that you wanted it to go to. That is a good point. So a classic story, and we're talking about going down. A classic story in 2016, I think it was, when basically the internet broke because AWS went offline. And AWS went offline for a long time, and this all came down to somebody accidentally restarted, added it to 0 to how many machines they were going to restart in US East 1. And it took the internet down because AWS was the provider. Azure and GCP weren't nearly as big, and there was a ton of places, like, I don't know, I'm going to say more than a half of the internet was offline. That being said, the worst part about it was the AWS status page was hosted in US East 1 on their storage there, their S3 storage there. So because US East 1 was down and their status page wasn't highly available, there was like 2 hours where there was no information because the internet was broken, so Twitter and those things were unavailable, and so like their own stuff was broken. So this is actually a really good point, is your status page and other things should be completely decoupled as much as you can from the actual service that you're providing, because it would have behooved AWS to host their status page on Azure, because that way they have obviously they're not going to do that. But that's a great example of another way of how you handle and how you alert based off of being down. So thanks for bringing that up, John. That was a really good point. All right, and this goes along my list of why not to use npm, but everybody uses npm. So there was more vulnerabilities in npm. You can't get around them. You just have to deal with them. And this is another reason to always make sure that your packages are up to date, and use something like Dependabot to ensure that your dependencies are the things that you're using don't have any known vulnerabilities, and update if need be. So anyways, GitHub found a couple vulnerabilities, and they're working to fix them in the Node.js package manager. So if you use it, you should probably look into this. These links will all be in the description about half an hour after the video is, after the stream. So yes, I should put them in there beforehand, and maybe that's something I'll work on. I have to wake up extra early though, so we'll see. We'll see if that happens. All right. Let's move on to the clouds. Unless there's any more discussion on security, we'll move on to the clouds right now. So let's start with GCP. We're switching around. We won't always start with AWS. They released a managed service for Prometheus, and it's in preview. I think I have a hair on my... And it's in preview. So if you use Prometheus and want a managed service, you can use this. Now you can also use Cortex to do a highly available Prometheus, the Cortex project, which is an operator, which will manage it in Kubernetes and provide a highly available Prometheus, but you still have to manage it. So managed services, you're going to pay for a managed service, and it's going to be more expensive than doing it yourself. But there's also advantages to that. You don't have to pay an engineer. So you have to hit a certain scale before doing it yourself makes sense. And the more managed services, the easier it is to just tie some things together. So this is cool. GCP also did this export Google Cloud data into Elastic Stack with data flow templates. So basically, these are just some data flow templates that they may launch. So they launched these 3 data flow templates here. And so you can use these to help get data into their BigQuery. So if that's something you're looking into, these might be really, really useful. So I pulled those out. Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot on GCP. I don't have this problem, so I haven't actually used these templates, so don't quote me on their effectiveness. But they're out there, and if this is something you're wanting to do, definitely check these out. And the reason these data flow templates are so good is because they're also templates which allow you to use them for your own. So if they don't quite work for you, they're going to let you make your own based off of these, which is really, really powerful. Is probably the more powerful thing here as using them as examples. Let's move on to Azure. So there was this, I think, is actually a bigger deal than maybe it was promoted as, but basically the max number of site-to-site VPN connections for their VPN gateway has been increased from 30 to 100, so over a 3 times increase. So if you were dealing with this, struggling with having too few, if your SKUs are if these are the types of gateways you're using, you've been upgraded. You can actually now do more. Now they say it doesn't affect legacy gateways with high performance SKUs, but yeah, if that's something you were dealing with, this is like the only solution to it. So that's why I think it was such a big deal. All right, Azure machine learning updates. So there was this that was released, basically some pre-built images for inference. So they basically built a bunch of stuff to help you get off the ground with inference on Azure more quickly. So that's cool, and this article is fairly good. Again, it will be linked. English. I wish that I could say English was my second language and not my first and only. Anyways, so yep, they released a whole bunch of ones from all of these, and so no framework to XGBoost. I don't know how to pronounce Onyx. I call it Onyx, but I'm pretty sure it's not Onyx. Scikit-learn, PyTorch, and TensorFlow. And this is like, you're going to say, well, they didn't actually add anything to the cloud. But these are really important because these help communities adopt things. Helps you get off the ground, helps you experiment faster. So I do think that they're a big part of being a big cloud is making sure that you have the tools to easily adopt. All right, public preview is the Azure Spring Cloud Start, Stop, and Bring Your Own Persistent Storage and Service Connector. So I think this is, if you're using the Spring Cloud, which I don't, so I'm maybe not the most knowledgeable person to talk on this, but if you're using the Spring Cloud in Azure, so they're managed Spring, it now allows you to bring your own persistent storage. I think that's huge. Bringing your own persistent storage is, yes, definitely huge. Allowing you to connect your apps with resource connectors, huge. Connectors are huge. Connectors, I need to make a video on connectors because they're absolutely phenomenal. In general, connectors are very powerful and allow you to do very powerful things. Okay, and this is fine, whatever. Moving on. Basic preview, run command, execute PowerShell or shell scripts on virtual machines and scale sets. So basically this is like a, yeah, words are failing me. So think of a pod, and a container is really just an isolated resource. And what they're doing here is allowing you to run some script across VMs and to orchestrate that. That's the word I had to think of. Container. I was in my head. What is Kubernetes? It's a container orchestrator or a pod orchestrator. Orchestrate allows you to orchestrate these scripts across your VM or VM fleets. So I think it's pretty powerful. Yeah, I think it's pretty powerful. Nice job. So now we'll move on to AWS. There was actually more things in AWS than I thought I was going to talk about because generally, following up to reInvent, so next week is reInvent. I think it's next week. Well, I mean, it's the week after. Yeah, it's next week after Thanksgiving. Usually they're pretty light on interesting things following headed up to reInvent. So the AWS Transfer Family adds identity provider options and enhanced monitoring capabilities. Don't really care about the enhanced monitoring. Enhanced monitoring capabilities should always be added as best you can. But the identity provider options is actually really powerful. So you can use Lambda with your AWS Transfer Family server to integrate an identity provider of choice. Previously, your AWS Lambdas were only able to work with Cognito as far as I understood. That's all I've ever done. But this is going to now allow you, and I say only easily worked with them. This is going to allow you to bring your provider of choice with your AWS Transfer Family server. So I think that this is really powerful because it brings a little bit of choice, and choice is important. Unless if you're Apple and then you want to lock everybody into your ecosystem, most ecosystems don't thrive. I think Apple would be contrary to that. Most ecosystems thrive with choice. Think Linux. Linux is maybe has too much choice sometimes, but yes. So anyways, I think that's important. Oops. All right, so Amazon Athena. Sorry, I always mispronounce that. I try to pronounce things as best as I know how to pronounce them. I don't know how to pronounce a ton of things. But I am highly opinionated on the things that I don't know how to pronounce, but still pronounce. Like GIF. It's a GIF. It's not a GIF. Don't call it GIF. That's peanut butter. All right. All right, so sorry. Cross-account federated queries. So basically, you can now cross-account have federated queries in their Amazon Athena. So this basically allows you to analyze data in place instead of trying to build pipelines to get the data into the right account. So this solves a huge problem. It's maybe a very specific problem, and so not a lot of people have it, but if you had this, it was a huge problem. So this is huge for the few people that actually do have that problem. Let me know if you have this problem and have had to deal with it. So okay, so the Amazon Linux 2 AMI is now available with kernel 5.10. So Linux kernel's updates is huge. New features like cgroups version 2, and if you don't know why that's a big deal, cgroups version 2 is a huge deal when it comes down to cgroups. And so things like this, things that even affect your containers, because again, remember, containers use that core kernel. They don't get their own kernel. They're using whatever the host is. So it's really big to be watching this kernel. It's really important because it brings those kernel features, whether it's GPU supports or container technologies like cgroups version 2. It's very important to watch these. It actually makes a big difference, even in containers. AppStream 2.0 launches Elastic Fleets, a serverless fleet type. To be honest, I put this in here because it seemed important, but I don't quite understand it completely. I think part of it is because I don't use AppStream, and maybe I need to get a little bit more familiar with AppStream. Sorry, I cover 3 clouds, so there's a lot of things to investigate, and every single one of them has their own name for stupid everything, whether it's function or Lambda functions. Yes. So anyways, I don't use AppStream. I've never used AppStream, so I'm a little fuzzy on it. But this seems like they brought a serverless fleet type, so it seemed important. If you guys know what it is, no, Drew Brill, you're pronouncing it wrong. It's not GIF. It's GIF. Or is that what you're saying? It's a GIF. I think that's what you're saying. Sorry, I can't read English. Anyways, yes. This is so I think this is important, but I'll let you guys tell me if AppStream launches Elastic Fleets is important or not. Amazon Pinpoint now includes an SMS simulator feature. I think this is pretty huge because it's hard to simulate SMSs, and so if you're using their SMS technology, it's really important to be able to simulate that and see what it's doing behind the thing, just to make sure that you're doing it right. Also, in your automated test pipelines, to make sure that you're doing SMS, that your SMS is working. This is a huge feature for testing and development. Absolutely huge. I also wonder, how you could use this with a little chaos theory. I'm not quite sure if it would work that way, but I almost want to try something with it like that. All right, and then Lambda now supports MTLS. I am doing a video on MTLS. If you guys don't know what MTLS is, it's TLS with mutual. The M stands for mutual TLS, which generally when you think of the HTTPS that's up here, so you see this HTTP, I can't make that big, but in your browser you get an HTTPS, which it stands for is TLS effectively. It means TLS. But that's a one-way cert. That means that you're trusting the person that you're hitting. But MTLS means mutual, which means that there's now a two-way handshake where not only the server trusts me, but I trust the server. So I can say that we're both the same. Now, this isn't for web browsing because web browsers and servers, by definition, servers want to know, like, anybody can go and log in or sign up, and so they need that untrusted TLS, which means one-way trusted, but you still need that TLS. But in modern infrastructure, it's important that your microservices talk with MTLS, and what MTLS does is it's a mutual TLS where it says I'm a known entity and I'm a known entity, and we can do the handshake and we can both know that these are known entities and there's not a man in the middle attack. So anyways, I will do a video on MTLS. That way I don't have to repeat myself and I can just go say, go check out my video on MTLS. That's what I'll do. Last one for the clouds is the Cloudflare. Last week they stopped a massive. If you don't know, most people think of Cloudflare as a security provider only, and that's just not being true anymore. It's just not true anymore. Durable objects, I covered this when they launched them, is one of the things that makes it not just a security. Not just a security provider anymore. I'm sorry. I guess my stream is. How's the stream? Is it looking? I don't know that there's much I can do. My internet provider is probably killing it, or dying. Hopefully, it all looks okay. Google is warning me that my bitrate is not high enough, and I'm sorry. Hopefully, it's okay. Unless if I hear otherwise, I'm going to move on and consider it okay. Okay, so I do think that you need to start taking Cloudflare and DigitalOcean seriously as cloud provider. Well, obviously, DigitalOcean always was a cloud provider, but Cloudflare is moving on and starting to step on the toes of your classic cloud providers, and durable objects, which are now generally available, are one of those ways. I'm not going to go into depth about it, but durable objects are basically, read their blog, but basically it's a storage device, and it allows you to have persistent storage while working on the thing collaboratively and ensuring that that thing is up to date for everyone. So basically the classic example would be like a Google Doc. A Google Doc you want a bunch of people to work on at the same time and all have the same state, the same current state. But then you also want to persist that somewhere. And that's what a durable object brings. Basically, it abstracts the database and the memory caching so that you get just this one single object, and that represents your document. And people can work on that all together collaboratively. And basically, yes, that's what a durable object is. Read their blog, but basically they're bringing these things, not just a security or a provider of that type anymore. So let's move on to our random articles. I got a couple. Love to talk about them with you all. We have everything from Apple's work from home policy, which isn't great, to a person betting on a company betting on single cloud, not multi-cloud. So a lot of people are going multi-cloud, and we'll talk about maybe some of the benefits that they think of in that, and a bunch of other things. So let's jump into that. How's everyone doing so far? How's everyone liking the stream? How's it working? Remember, if you're jumping in right now, next week we will still do news, even though it's Thanksgiving. Also, to be wary of, next Saturday I will be doing my my challenge stream. We're not quite sure what the challenge is going to be yet. Probably should have had a topic by now. I was thinking I would do dual stacks, but I'm not sure that I want to do that to my home network just right yet. So maybe we'll do dual stack. Maybe we'll do something else. Maybe something complete. If you have an idea, either tweet it at me or join the Discord and let me know. All right, let's talk about this. When are we going to understand that if you don't treat your employees and give them what they want, they'll find a company that will? This is what Apple continuously fails to do. And basically, this work from home has made iterations after iterations and made employees angry. The employees are still not happy about it. And it sounds like Apple is looking to get everybody back in the office by February. And basically, they're like wanting 1 day from home. And I think they're making a consensus that they'll do 2 days from home. I honestly, if you asked my opinion on the work from home, now I work 100% remotely. I'm a completely remote employee. I do think that it would be really nice to make it into the office once a week. If I lived close enough where it was like a 2-hour drive, it would be cool, especially because I have a lot of people work with companies that I would say 75% of their workforce lives in one area. And then only 25% are that full high remote. Now, if you're in a completely distributed, I think it's completely different. But I do like going into the office, so I wouldn't actually mind 1 or 2 days a week. But doing like 3 or 4 seems like you need to go in and have your meetings and leave. Now, again, I think that you can do the fully distributed, and that's what I generally shoot for, because then you also get the talent pool that you can have a distributed talent pool, which I think is super beneficial. But, anyways, those are just my opinions on that. Let's move on to single cloud. Enough harping on Apple. We all know Apple. Anyways, so Sabre, it's not a company that I really knew about, but this is an interesting article. It basically states that Sabre is going into a 10-year partnership with Google Cloud and is going single cloud, just with GCP. I bet they wish that they knew about the outages before they made this partnership. Might have gotten a couple billion knocked off. Maybe not a couple billion since it's only 2 billion, but maybe a couple million knocked off the price tag. Be like, so what about those downtimes? Anyways, besides that, they're betting on single cloud. I think this is interesting. I'm not opposed to this. And I think that people too often jump on an idea that sounds good and solves a problem. So, like Netflix is never down. They literally are never down. Netflix has one of the best engineering teams out there. And they're literally never down. And this is because they run everywhere. They run their own stuff. They also, I believe, run on a or a few clouds, but also in their own data centers. And this allows them to never be down. But there's a cost to that. There is a huge cost, and it's not just having. So a lot of people will talk about the cost of multi-cloud being that you store your data in multiple zones, in multiple areas, and that's not the only cost of having multi-cloud. It's not just storing your data and running extra services in multiple clouds. There's also an engineering cost. You have to have a team that can develop something that can work on multiple clouds, that can switch between multiple clouds and load balance across multiple clouds. So it comes at a huge cost, and maybe it's not completely warranted. How much is an hour of downtime? So let's say GCP has never been down for more than like an hour. I say never. Don't quote me on that. But for the most part, they're not down for more than an hour. And that's probably like once a year, most of the time. How much is it going to cost you to be down for an hour versus to support multiple clouds? I think you could do a cost benefit analysis and maybe come out and say that it doesn't cost you that much, not enough to warrant multi-cloud. I'm not saying that I've done this analysis specifically, but I think that it's a valid argument to make here, and that maybe multi-cloud just isn't that important. Let me know what you guys think. Join the Discord. We can talk about it more. I'm sure that I've just offended a bunch of people, but I'm sure that I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. This article just got me thinking, like, maybe multi-cloud isn't that big of a deal. I mean, multi-cloud sounds cool, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. And I know I also always say, only include complexity when you need it, and the multi-cloud would be that complexity. So just removing that complexity is probably huge. Probably allows their development teams to focus. Yeah. Anyways, I think yeah. All right. So this, I know you guys heard me. I have a video on GitOps. Basically the CNCF paid some people to go off. I don't know if they paid them. They might not have paid them, but they made a working group, so they probably didn't pay them. But they made a working group for GitOps, and they tried to define it. Now, I wish I had joined this working group. I wish that I had known that it was going on, and I need to be more involved, because I could have helped them, probably. Maybe not. But I actually like what they did for the most part, because if you notice, they have 4 points on what GitOps is. These are the things that I said in my video and to make sure to focus on. And these are things that I definitely disagreed with. Some people like Weave and who's the other big GitOps? GitLab. So Weave and GitLab a lot of times will say Git specifically, and they will say Kubernetes specifically. And then some will focus on hardware or infrastructure. And so I actually do like this definition. It's short and sweet. And if it had been out when I made my video, I would have included it. But it basically covers what's in my it's a declarative, so it must be declared declaratively. That's in my video. Versioned and immutable. I specifically say it's not Git only. I coined MurOps for mercurial operations. For Firefox, they can do MurOps. And Disney is suing me. It's about versioned and immutable, which, Git solves this, but it's not just Git. And then these are touched lightly as pulled automatically and continuously reconciled. I did touch on this. We talked about the agents that ensure correctness. This is what I meant. This is probably better wording than what I used with the continuously reconciled instead of agents that ensure correctness. But that's what I meant. So I really like this. If you're getting into GitOps, you should check out this blog article. It will be linked in the description below. Anyways, it's a Open GitOps version 1.0. I wish they would have released a beta one. I'm going to try to get on whichever working group is going to work on this again next for version 2. Anyways, version 1 is out. So check it out. All right, so Uber, huge engineering. So there's a lot we can learn from it. And I try to bring out the best engineering blogs of the week, and this is one of them. Critical path analysis for microservices architecture. When you get into the microservices, when you're dealing with microservices, one of the hard things is this critical path analysis, finding what caused your problem. Because what happens is it's not necessarily just one stream that caused it. There could be a chain link of microservices that caused your outage or your failure or whatnot. And this engineering blog, now I have to warn you, it is long. It is long, very long, but it is fantastic and well worth the read. I actually need to read it again slower. I just briefly okay, yeah, that sounds right. But I need to go back and read it better because I think they did a fantastic job, and you should definitely check it out. So basically, yeah, this is that critical path, how the microservices go to get to that critical path. So check it out. It's definitely a really good read. So this is probably this week's best engineering blog for this week. That needs to be a category. Best engineering blog. And what I need to do is I need to read that one blog really, really well and do a critical analysis on that blog. But this one is really good to read, especially if you're into the microservices. Now, again, I don't think microservices are necessarily for everyone. If your team is small, I mean your company is small, I actually don't think microservices are the way to go. And I need to make a video on how to build a monolith in a way that can be broken up easily when your team does start scaling. I know. All right. This is on a graph database. You know what? I don't know enough myself about graph databases. They're one of the things that I want to look better into. I understand them at a high level concept. This goes over very high level. So if you're looking at trying to understand a graph database, check this out. I think it does a really good job with their little charts. I like their little charts. And check this out. So if you're trying to get into graph databases, I think this is a fantastic article. It's very high level, very simplistic. I didn't learn a whole lot myself. but it pretty much covered what I do know about graph databases. And yeah, I'm going to hopefully keep us updated. I don't know if you can hear that. It sounds like there are elephants above my head. Sorry if you can hear that. All right. Well, this is scrolled down. Oh, GraphQL. This is not a graph database. This is like a REST API or gRPC, except basically in your request, you ask for the information that you want. I need to do a video on this too. It's very interesting and basically puts the onus on the server to handle the query and give you the right data. So basically every single query is its own query. Well, every query can be highly customized. There's no set paths or routes. You just query for the data that you want to know. Now, I think that there's pros and cons to it, but I think that GraphQL is a really cool API, and GitHub is probably one of the leaders of the GraphQL. And actually, they have a fantastic API that you can go and hit. They have a little playground. I'll link the playground in the description of the video so that you guys can go and play. Basically, it will use, if you log in, it will let you query your own stuff and hit it right there from your web browser. So they're one of the leaders that I know of the GraphQL API. So definitely check that out, and I'll link that in the description. Here's an article. If you're into GitHub, this is the state of GitHub. Octoverse is GitHub. Basically, this is a high-level overview. Not going to go over it. There's a bunch of highlights that you can go and click and read. But if you're interested in that, I'll link it. IBM is stating that it will have quantum dominance. They said dominance in 2023. Now, whether that will be true or not, I don't know. But that is what they are saying. And they're coming out with a 127 qubit processor. I'm going to do some videos on quantum probably late next year. I have some things that I'd like to do with them. Explaining what a quantum processor is, I believe there are a ton of videos out on that already, but I'm going to try to do some fun things with it, and we'll see how well they work or don't work in my case. But yeah, IBM, the IBM Q. Whew, look at that. It's actually very interesting. I love quantum computing. I do think it's probably the future of computing, but we'll see if we can actually make it work. It's like warp drives, probably the future of space travel, if we could make them work. That's all. All right, so for some open source. This is going to be our open source project section. Now, this is going to be a little bit different because there's some updates. There's some things I want to remind you of. There's some version releases that I think are important, and then we're going to talk about the tech radar from the CNCF. So this is a little different than your standard project. We're not going to hit on specific projects through this one. How's everyone liking the stream so far? I hope that this is informative. I hope that you guys like the news and that the stream's quality is at least passable, at least okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining so far, and if you're still here, I really appreciate it. All right, so let's talk about Prometheus. What's new in Prometheus? What could be new in Prometheus? An agent. But Merrick, Prometheus is agentless. Not anymore. Is anybody getting car sick with that? I could do this for days. Literally do this for days. Okay, I'll stop that. Sorry. That's worst stream quality ever. Horrible content, and I apologize. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. Not sorry at all. Not sorry at all. Anyways, they released an agent to address a new range of use cases. Now, this is not really new, but it's kind of new. Basically, when you run Prometheus as an agent, it's still the Prometheus server you know. But what happens is, and I need to do a video on this as well. But what happens is, a lot of times what happens is you have a core Prometheus service, and then you have some that are like at IoT and at the edge. And so you have these other Prometheus servers, and eventually they sync their data back up to that core data eventually. And that's what the agent mode is now. Basically, once it synchronizes it with the core, it purges the data from the agent one. Now, it's basically still just the exact same server, but it works to address this. I have a remote ingestion point that collects data from a remote area, and every once in a while, it synchronizes that data back to my central Prometheus database. And that's what this new agent is. Now, that is probably oversimplifying it for a majority of people, so I encourage you to go and read in on it. But yeah, that's what this is. So check it out, and that's a high level what this is. Rocky 8.5 is out, and now why is this a big deal? Well, last week you know that I mentioned that RHEL 5.8, 8.5, Rocky 8.5 and RHEL 8.5 are released. So this comes only a week after RHEL's release. One of the problems with CentOS is sometimes it was like 30 to 60 days late. And a lot of the work they did when building Rocky from the ground up was to ensure they had a fast pipeline. And why this is important is when RHEL updates to 8.5, a week later, not even a week later, it was like 5 days? 5 days later, you get Rocky Linux 8.5. So this is the open source upstream. So if you're looking for your developers to have something you don't want to pay through the nose for, here is Rocky 8.5. It is compliant with RHEL 8.5. So if your app runs on RHEL 8.5, it will run on Rocky 8.5. Anyways, it's released. I think this is a big deal. It's a very big deal, especially with CentOS. So if you're a huge CentOS user, and now CentOS is the upstream and not the downstream of RHEL, Rocky stands in as the downstream of RHEL. So if that's you, I think this is huge, and it is very important. All right. Istio 1.12 is released. Now, why do I think this is so important to bring it up in my open source news is because first you need to upgrade to at least 1.10, and 1.10 basically made Istio really usable because it works with Kubernetes networking, solves a lot of problems I had with Istio, and 1.10 I think is the most usable, like 1.10 and up. Before 1.10 it was very, very difficult to use Istio, and they've worked on making it easier. So I think this is really big, and yeah, they did bring some interesting things like the WebAssembly API. An interesting thing here would be this telemetry API. So basically, OpenTelemetry, which was brought in the last release, is being more stable. And yes, this Kubernetes Gateway API, which is one thing that I was saying was very important, which was brought in 1.10, has updates. Yep. And so, like, yeah, it's a pretty important release. But yeah, as you note up here, Kubernetes 1.22 will only work with Istio 1.10 and above. So make sure that you're, and this comes with, in 1.22, there was deprecations, if you remember that, and things had to update to handle those deprecations. And so do make sure that you're on 1.10 because you're going to need to be as you're upgrading Kubernetes versions, or you're going to be in for a bad time. So let's talk about the CNCF Technology Radar. I generally really like these. And basically, how to read this graph, this chart, this thing here, is the further out it is from here is the more theoretical it is. But I actually disagree with it this time. I actually struggle with this. I think things like, I've seen many corporations, large corporations like SUSE, use GitHub Actions. Rancher use GitHub Actions. these are large corporations that have adopted this technology at its core. So I don't think that GitHub Actions is an access or even trial. I do believe that GitHub Actions is in adopt. I don't know who they talk to. Another thing, this is all about like DevSecOps here. Where is Flux? There's Argo CD. I don't see Flux. And they put OPA. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced OPA, which is like German for grandfather. In adopt, but I would have put OPA in like trial. I do know that OPA is pretty cool, and this is nothing against OPA. It's also fairly new. It's like a year old or two, maybe. I wouldn't have thought. I haven't seen that many people actually adopt it as core. Vault, yes. Artifactory, that's a weird one to be put in here. Istio, sure. Calico, for sure. Cilium, I also thought would be in trial, at least. Cilium is a little more difficult, but yeah, I don't know that I definitely necessarily agree with all of these. Now, these other ones, yeah, Hardness, Nexus, Sentinel, Linkerd, I also don't think is. I think Linkerd is either in adopt or trial. Anyways, I don't know that I 100% agree, but what I did like is this gives you a great layout of the spectrum. I think it's a little biased by who they talk to. Obviously, Flux is adopted by Weaveworks. Like, Weaveworks uses it solely. So maybe Weaveworks wasn't interviewed for this. But anyways, this is it. So you can kind of get an idea of what's on the radar, what people are finding interesting. I would say that every project on this radar is interesting, except Artifactory. Artifactory is not interesting. I also don't know what this is, so I'm going to look it up. Sonar, is it Sonar Kube? Sonar Kube? Okay, I think it's Sonar Kube, is how you pronounce that. It uses a Q instead of a K. It threw me off, but OPA is definitely for your security. 100% look for it. Argo CD is a cool GitOps tool. Terraform, everybody knows what Terraform is. I'm not going to explain it. Calico is a great networking CNI plugin. Vault keys, Artifactory, blah. Sonar Cube, I'm going to say is something related to, I don't know. I'm looking it up really quickly. It's about writing better code. The ad says Sonar Cube, write better code. It's an advertisement. I don't want to pay for something. Is it not open source? Oh, wait. Here it is. Here it is. I'll pull this up. All right, and everybody, that's pretty much it for today. But I'm going to talk a little bit about these. This is Sonar Cube. I don't know. Sonar Cube's capacity to not only show health of an application, but also highlight issues newly introduced with a quality gate in place. I like this. At least the concept. I like the concept. Too often, you'll get like something that says, oh, 1,000 issues. And this is saying we'll gate it for the code that you change, not the code that you didn't change, because you have an old derelict code base, and yeah, sometimes when you start scanning that for security, it becomes a little bit difficult to actually start that, because you can't check the project in because there's like 6 months worth of issues that you have to solve. I think that this is interesting. I consider my interest piqued. For being something I had never heard of, I find it hard that it's in the adopt, but I mean, I could just be really behind. There is only only 6K stars for being in adopt? I feel like, I don't know. I don't know where the CNCF got this as adopt, but oh. This is not a null channel approved license. Absolutely not. But that's all right. It's an adopt. I guess people are adopting this right, left, and center. How old is it? It's written in Java? I didn't know people still use Java. Huh. Okay. Well, anyways, it's an adopt. All of these are worth looking into, though, is my point. If they're on here, they're definitely a project that's worth looking into. Oh, no. Oh, are you... 1 second. All right. There, the voice should be fixed instead of just coming out of your left ear. Sorry about that. That is horrifying. I can't believe I went an entire stream just out of the left ear. My apologies. So what happened is this morning, I don't know about you guys, but these XLR cables meant to last forever. I have gone through 2 in the last month. And basically, another one failed right before stream. And so I quickly swapped out my audio interface. Problem with that is the OBS channel for that was not a mono channel. Thanks for bringing that up, and I'm so sorry that you had to deal with that, and that my entire stream was mono channel. I'm sorry. I will remember that for the future, for future streams. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. Never feel like you can't reach out and say something like that. I'm sorry. Well, for everyone that is deaf in their left ear, I apologize, and everybody that is now deaf in their left ear from only listening to me in that. Sorry, I feel bad. Entire stream. All right, well, that's really it for me. I fixed my audio right here at the end. Please, again, never hesitate to reach out and complain about the audio. I'm sorry about that. All right, for next week, again, live stream Saturday. Join me, and we'll do something fun. There'll be a challenge. I want to make it a challenge that I'm probably going to fail to do. I want to try to do something. Ooh. I have an idea at least. All right. So join me on Saturday for that, and then again, the news will happen on Monday. So we'll see what news happens over the Thanksgiving week. All right.